Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Tonight I'm here to speak to you about nonverbal communication. And the definition of nonverbal communication is communication without words. It includes the impaired behaviors such as facial expressions, eyes, touching, tone of voice, as well as the less obvious, which are your posture, the spatial distance between two or more people, and the way you dress. Now, there are several different types of nonverbal communication. They are sign language, again your posture, your facial expressions, gestures, physical contact, orientation, eye contact, and distance. Now, for sign language, people who are deaf, that's how they communicate with us and towards one another. Since they're not able to hear, they use their hands to express how they feel. Now, with posture, an example of this is if you walk into an interview, you don't want to be slouched over. You want to stand up straight so they think you're confident. A facial expression is if you're happy, you have a big smile on your face. If you're sad, you're frowning. And sometimes your facial expressions tells your mood. It's a perfect example of nonverbal communication. Now, gestures, I'm sure we've all received one or two that aren't so nice, but a gesture can be a waving hello or a goodbye for that instance. And physical contact can be giving somebody a hug or a pat on the back. Hey, you did a great job. Another one can be a simple handshake. Now, orientation, that's either if you're face-to-face with someone or side-by-side. And a great example of this can be if you're Catholic and you go to confession, you can either choose to go face-to-face with the priest and tell him your sins, or you can go into the confession box where you have a screen between you and the priest. The third is eye contact. And it's very important to have eye contact when you're talking to someone, because that will signal a red flag if you don't. Like, it would make you think, why won't the person look at me? And the last is distance. And you don't want someone you don't know standing right up against you. It would be a very uncomfortable situation. Now, G.W. Porter broke it down into 4 broad categories of nonverbal communication. They are physical, aesthetic, signs, and symbols. Now, for physical, he says your facial expressions, sense of touch, sense of smell, and body motions. For aesthetic, he talks about it takes place through a creative expression. That can be when you paint, or when you draw a cartoon, or you play a musical instrument, or through a sport that you love and that you're very competitive at. The third is signs, and he says mechanical types, and he associates horns and salutes with that. Now, when you think of a horn, you might think of a band member, or with a siren, you might think of a police officer or an ambulance. And the last one is symbolic, and that has to do with your religious beliefs or your social status. And an example of your religious beliefs, you can say the sign of the cross is a nonverbal gesture. Now, something that I think we all do, and we don't even realize it, is when we talk to somebody, we create social distances. And the first is an intimate distance. This is a good distance to have with your spouse. It's from you to about 18 inches. And it would encompass something like a hug. It wouldn't be a good distance for a teacher to have with a student, because the student might feel like they're intruding. So it's not a good distance for that. But the next is personal distance, and this is a good distance for a student to have with a teacher. This way the teacher is able to explain the lesson effectively, but the student still feels comfortable. And that's about 18 inches to 4 feet. It's also a good distance to have with a good friend. The third is social distance. And this is a good distance to have with a casual acquaintance or a not so close friend. And the last is public distance. And that's for something in a more formal setting like this, 12 feet and onward. And the last slide, a picture says 1,000 words. How true this slide is. Because here we have the facial expression of someone who might be curious. The next is a facial expression of someone who might be a little scared or bewildered. The third is a facial expression of someone who's snubbing their nose to something. The fourth might be a facial expression of someone who's like, oh my, like this is a little, what's going on? The fourth is someone who appears to be a little too happy, or the fifth one, I'm sorry. And the sixth one appears to be someone who's distraught. And I'm sure we all have our own interpretations of what these facial expressions say, but they're my interpretations. And as I was doing my research for this project, I came across a study that UCLA did, and it indicated that up to 93% of communication effectiveness is done through nonverbal cues. So I would like to thank you for listening to my speech. Now I would like to open it up to you. Does anybody have any questions?
What are some ways of nonverbal communication that somebody can show if they're open to what you're talking about or not?
If they have their arms open. Now, a perfect way of showing not if they're closed off is to go like this and be like kind of like crossing their arms. If you're open to something, you're not going to be standoffish. You want to be confident and be willing to open up to the person. Is that it? Thank you.